Hello everyone, very warm welcome to SAP UI5 and Fiori Training. In our last session of SAP UI5, we saw how to create our Fiori application end-to-end in SAP WebIDE. In today's session, I will try to address one very important question which I've received from email. So many of you are watching my tutorials always on YouTube. You're following me with my training videos, and I'm also getting a lot of feedback about my trainings from all of you. So this special video I'm recording for my YouTube audience and the people who are taking my courses for you to understand how can we make use of SAP WebIDE along with Git Repository. So we'll be looking into the basics of Git Repository because many of you are from SAP ABAP background and may not have any idea about what is a GitHub and what is a Git repository. So we'll be starting with very basics and try to understand how can you configure your own Git repository, which can store all the source code what you're using for your development, and how can you control the versions of your application. So let's get started first with the motivation. So what was the motivation behind having something called a Git repository? So as you know, all of you are following my videos and I'm getting a lot of response from YouTube and different channels from many of you asking about so many questions. I've received many questions over the internet on my mailbox asking about a lot of questions about version management, repository, how to manage the source code, how to work with multiple developers in a single team. So all these questions will be answered in today's class. So first question received from Matthias is, like in SAP ABAP, we can generate versions of the application. For example, if I'm building a complex Fiori application, I have done 30% of the coding and now I start working on the rest of 30% of the 100%. And after completing about 60%, I realized that I screwed up something in the code and I want to go back to the last stable state, right? So that this is what possibly also happens with you, that you're starting with a big project, you completed about some part of the project, and then you have given logical close to some part of your project, and now you did some change which is now breaking everything up, and you want to roll back your all changes to something which was the latest and the most stable one. So how can we handle such type of scenarios with respect to UI5 and Fiori applications? Second question received from Rahul: how can we work with multiple developer environment? Every time I make changes to my Fiori app, I'm sending it to my co-developer. Currently, we are working two members in a team. So every time Rahul is making a code change, he's sending an email to the co-developer that he has made this change via the email, and then the co-developer is making this change in the Fiori project to keep it all in sync. Now she makes the changes and get email from, and he will then get an email from her. She makes a change and he's getting an email to adapt her changes into his code base. So we are not sure if we can scale when more and more developers comes into the team. Very valid question. That's what you must be also facing in a day-to-day development environment, that you're working with a team where you have more than two or 4 or 5 members in a team working with the same project. How can you manage all your code base together as a team? Then another question from Chandra, my manager, asking me to explore possible ways to share project with everybody in the team, and they should be able to check the changes which I'm making also to it. So it may be also possible that Chandra is on leave and there's another developer in his team who would have to make some emergency corrections to the code base because user is facing some production downtime. Right, so it should be stored in a way that everyone in the team or everyone in organization should probably have an access to your code base. So in case if there is a change required, that can be done when in your absence and can be released to the customers who are using your Fiori application. And then finally, hey Anubhav, I got into the new project today. Thanks for amazing training provided by you. Thank you, John. My manager told me to that I score highest in interview, and it's all because of you. Thank you once again. They are all using something called Git in the project. What is it and how can I learn the same? So this was also one question. John has recently completed my training and gotten into a job in one of the multinationals, and now he is seeing that in his team there is something called Git which they are using for their Fiori project. So how can he ramp himself up to this word called Git? What exactly the Git is? Yeah. So let's get started. and try to understand from very scratch what exactly is Git, what is a Git repository, what is something called a branch. So all that we will be doing. But before that, I assume some of the prerequisite to all of you, you should already have a knowledge about what is WebIDE, how can we create our UI5 and Fiori applications using WebIDE, and how can we store or work with Fiori applications. So all that, I guess, I assume that you all have a knowledge, and let's get started now with understanding of what exactly the Git is. Yeah. So what is a Git? So you saw all the problem statements now. What are all the different problems that you guys are probably facing in your company? And you want to understand how can we solve the problem. So all these problems, what I just noted down here are, there is only one solution to it, which is nothing but Git. So what is Git? So Git is nothing but it's a distributed repository to store your source code. Now, the beauty of Git is it can store any variety of source code. It could be Java, it could be an HTML, it could be JavaScript. So any kind of source code file which you have, it could be, even if you're crazy enough, you can also use it for storing text files. So it can store your source code, what you are creating in your development environment, along with your code developer in a team, together within a single repository. Now if you also observe, there is a word called distributed. What is distributed? So a distributed repository environment is an environment which means it can work in different networks. So you can be in a different network, your colleague can be in a different network, and somebody else who is also going to check out your project can be in a different network. So they all can connect to the single repository from different networks. And if you also observe quickly here in the picture of our presentation, we have, it's you from your computer, then your friend from another completely different network, and then there is something called a GitHub, which is holding all the repository information, which is holding all the source code which you guys are using, which you guys are synchronizing. So or your main source code, the common development is done with the help of this GitHub, where you store all the source codes, and they all are in different network. That's why it's called distributed repository store for your source code. Now, little bit of history. It was developed by Linus Torvald in year 2005. So this is the person who has developed initially the Linux operating system. So it was, or GitHub was, or Git repository concept itself, or Git was initially developed by Linus Torvald to manage the code base. Now, what are the advantages of using Git repository? First of all, the first advantage is no project language. So no programming language, sorry, no programming language knowledge is required, or in fact it supports variety of programming code snippets to be stored into the system. So it is not bound to a particular programming knowledge. Like if you only know Java, then you can use GitHub. Not required. You can be from any programming language, and your code can be in any programming language. It is just used to store files of any programming language. So don't think it's a programming language. That's sometimes it's a myth that people think it's a programming language. It's not programming language. It's just a repository to store your programming language code. Second interesting advantage is it's decentralized. Decentralized means you can be on distributed networks. Many developers on different networks can work with the repository together. So many developers from different network can work with single code base. The third advantage is it tracks down all the versions. So it tracks the version and source code changes. So at any point of time you feel that there is some problem, there is something which you have done a mess into the code, you can roll it back to the previous stable version. We will be looking it into the demo. Then of course, as I mentioned, you can revert back to a stable version. Okay. Then also you can make use of concept of local and remote repository. So for example, you are making some changes and you're going to break down your piece of changes into, let's say, 5 different changes. So first you make one change and then you make next change and then you make, so small piece of changes you are doing, and every small piece of change which you complete, which is a logical close you want to give, that you can store it in your local repository as a commit. And then once your logical close of all these 5 or 10 changes are done, you can then make these changes public to everyone, to other developers as well. So you have a concept of local as well as remote repository. We'll discuss about it in a minute. Then there is also no internet communication connection is required to work with local repository. So if you are using local repository concept of Git, then you don't need any internet connection. Of course, for working with remote repository, you need an internet connection and probably sometimes your internet connection where the GitHub is deployed. Then another advantage is you can take a snapshot of file. So at any point of time you want to go back, look back the previous version, what was the state, you can take a snapshot of your files. So what is the procedure to typically to develop, and what is this something called local repository? Let's imagine a developer called Anubhav. So here I am. He's a developer and he's working into a project, UI5 and Fiori project. It could be also Java project, it could be a VB project, it could be a text file, it could be JavaScript file or web development project. So let's say this is the developer Anubhav. He's working with the project. Now what typically Anubhav will have is, when he want to manage his source code and version management, he will make use of Git. So what Git does is it gives him an option to store all the code changes, all the files into something called local repository, right? You need to store into a repository to track the versions, right? So he can do it in a local repository, but at some times he will have a growing team. He will have more people joining his team. Let's say another developer joins his team. His name is Sam. Now, Sam also want to work along with Anubhav on a common project. Now, this local project, what Anubhav has, will not work out anymore for Sam because Anubhav keeps on making changes, and these changes Sam also has to access. So how will they access? How will Sam access these changes? So we have to then create something called a remote repository, which is on the internet. And this remote repository, both Anubhav and Sam gets connected to. And that's how they can access each other's changes and also manage sometimes the conflicts. Because it may so happen that a developer makes a change into a file and another developer also made change to the same file. Now both becomes incompatible. So you will also see in our demo that we have a nice feature called conflict resolution. So we'll be looking into it. So then Sam will also have a local repository concept, and both of them are then developing first initially with their local repository. And once they give a logical close to their development, let's say a small piece of feature I had developed, and then after that feature is developed completely in local, I then can push to the remote repository. And then all the developer working in the team can see that Anubha have recently completed one small piece of development, let's say Delta 1. Yeah, and this delta 1 is available, and then they can take out these code changes, they can merge with their current code changes what they are doing, right? If the merging is not possible, they will resolve the conflicts, and then they can also update their changes back to this remote repository. And that's how you will see all the developers who are working in a team will have all their changes keeps on recording, and then that's your version management, that's your repository which is global. All your problems will get solved, your versioning problem, your tracking problem, who has made what change on what date, that will also be recorded. You can anytime revert back to any of the change. That's why we have a remote repository concept with the Git. So we have always local repository, which is local to a developer who is working with the changes. We have a concept of remote repository wherein we need to now share this project with everybody in the team. Then we will go with the remote repository concept. Along with the Git, there is also a concept of Gerrit. Gerrit is actually an advanced version of Git where you also have review capabilities. For example, Anubhav is working as a developer and there is another guy in his team, let's say Mr. James, and Mr. James is actually the architect of this team. Now, Anubhav is not allowed to make changes to the repository immediately after he makes some change. Anubhav has to go to Mr. James and ask Mr. James to review the code. After Mr. James gives an approval for reviewing the code, then only Anubhav will be allowed to make changes to the remote repository. Of course, Anubhav can develop with the local repository, but he should not be allowed to make changes to remote until or unless we have review done by Mr. James of the code base. So that's something a Gerrit concept. We'll not be looking into Gerrit into this particular demo. So right now this is out of scope for us. So code review and quality assurance is right now out of scope. We will just look at creating our Git repository in a remote repository, local repository, working with a single developer, working as two different developers, synchronizing their code and managing also the version control of their code base. Hope it's all clear to you. What is a local repository and what is a remote repository? Very important interview question. What is a local repository? It's a repository in the user's workstation, local to the user. Any changes which user does to achieve a milestone can be stored into local repository, and that can be stored using something called a git command called commit. So whenever we are talking about commit, we are actually saying that we are storing our changes into our local repository. So whenever you say something called commit in the Git, it means you are sending your changes which you have done to the local repository. So you can locally also keep track of the versions. Okay. So here also you can keep track of versions. So any change you make in the Git, if you always see the versions are or the changes which you are committing will be noted down like a simple straight line with the circles. So any change which you make will be denoted in the Git like this. So each circle here represents something called a commit made by the developer. So each circle what you see is actually a commit. This is how you will see in representational format. Each circle here represents a commit by the developer, and each commit you can roll it back, each commit you can switch back, each commit is actually a version for you in your local repository. Similarly, there will be, and this whole set of commits are called branches. So if you see, this is actually a branch. So branch is collection of lot of commits. That's what called a branch. Okay. So branch is a collection of commits, and each commit is actually storing the changes which you have recently done into the branch, which is used for your version management locally. Again, I say locally. Now, whatever changes you have done here, you have to also bring into the remote repository, for which you will use something called push. So whenever you do a push, it means you are making the changes to the remote repository. So all the changes which you are doing here, the commits, these commits will also be sent to the remote repository using something called push. And in remote repository also you will have similar like this a branch. And now by far what was happening, if you see, all these commits were coming from only one developer in the local repository, which is Anubhav, because it's his local repository. Any change which Anubhav makes goes to the local repository and all are blue color. Now let me represent Sam's commits into a different color. So let's say Sam is another developer, and his commits which he is making into the local branch, his local branch, are indicated by orange color bubbles. So let me just do it. That's a branch then Sam has. So Sam will also have similarly a local repository. In this local repository, Sam will have also a branch, and any commit which Sam is doing, let's say indicated by the orange bubble. Now, since it's a remote repository which is common for everyone, there will be commits which will be by one developer, there will be commits which will be by another developer. So a lot of developers will be making changes to this remote repository, and that's what becomes your final code base for the end user to be delivered. So in one Fiori application, probably you are not the only one who is developing it. There are a lot of other people in your team who are developing these Fiori applications. So These are all the people who are actually making the changes, and you see there will be a lot of commits in the remote branch from different developers. So that's a remote branch. We typically call this branch as origin. Okay, origin. This is called origin, and the branch name is named as master. Okay, so branch name is master. Origin is actually representing that it's a remote branch. Okay, and these are called local branches. So the local branches are also typically in a project are denoted by master branch. So you will have one master branch which is local. You will have one master branch which is in the remote repository. Hope it's clear to everyone. So any change which you're making here finally has to be shipped to the remote branch. That's when other developers can see your changes. And at the end, once your entire development cycle is complete, you collect all these code changes together, and then you make a packet which is your final UI5 application, which should be delivered to the customer, which should be delivered to your end user for consumption. So all of this what you have done here, this will be finally downloaded from the Git, and this is your final UI5 project. This project you deploy to your ABAP system, to your ABAP repository using UI/UI5/UI5 repository load program. That's basically a milestone. So you have achieved a big milestone with all the developers working together in a team using the Git repository, and then you can drive this particular project from the master branch from the origin and deploy it to your SAP ABAP repository finally. So in day-to-day life, in normal project, you always work with Git repository. Once you achieve the final milestone, you take out the final UI5 project out of it and deploy this guy to the ABAP system, which then gets delivered to the user. That's the normal development process in UI5 and Fiori. Of course, there's more to it, like you have also review process in place where you would like to do review. You also probably sometime want to do a code coverage, unit test, a lot of different things before taking out this particular UI5 project. But in general, if you see a normal typical UI5 project, that's the normal flow. In fact, that's also a flow for any kind of development using Git. Hope it's clear to everyone what is repository, what is commit, what is push, what is a local branch, what is a remote branch, what is origin master, and what is the final release or snapshot. So this is what exactly a snapshot is. On a particular day, let's say on my release date, 1st of March 2018, I made my first release to the customer. So that's my release date. Okay. Then there are a lot of other features which we will be exploring in the system. So let's get started with our first UI5 project, and we will then create a fresh Git repository, initialize the fresh Git repository and make use of it. We'll also look at the settings which we need to do in order to work with Git in our WebIDE. So let me get started first of all with a new UI5 project in my local WebIDE. Now, those who are not sure about what is a WebIDE, what is UI5, what is Fiori, how to develop things, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have lots of videos on YouTube about UI5 and Fiori development. So just go to YouTube, UI5 training. You can search for that, and you will find here. You can see my videos, UI5 and Fiori training. So you can go to any of these videos and understand what exactly UI5 and Fiori training, what exactly UI5 is, what is Fiori is, what is the learning map, right? Learning map for learning UI5 and Fiori, what concepts you need to learn. So please subscribe to my YouTube videos to keep updated to all the latest and greatest content, which I'll keep on uploading free of cost on YouTube for all of you. So you can do that. Okay, so you see a lot of videos are posted on my YouTube channel. So please go to my YouTube channel and you'll find here the playlist, and in this playlist you will find here UI5 and Fiori training. So you can see here in the UI5 and Fiori training, a lot of free videos on UI5 and Fiori are available. So any free knowledge if you want in future, you please subscribe to my channel so that you will get latest content automatically notified on your email box. Okay, let's move on. So that's my local web IDE. I had already covered this in my Fiori course. Those who know me, those who subscribe to my Fiori course already knows about it. We have learned all of these concepts regarding development on web IDE in our Fiori course. So I'm not going to touch upon those. I'll just show you with the perspective of Git what we're doing. So I get into now to my SAP WebIDE, and this is my WebIDE personal edition. I just connect into it. And then I'm going to create a new project, fresh UI5 project over here using my OData service. So right click on workspace, new project from template. I'm just going to create a master detail application. Now, one more interesting point is based on the version in your ABAP system, you got to choose the right version of UI5 framework over here. Now, many times people come to me and say, Anubhav, we have created a UI5 project from WebIDE, and when we're deploying in our gateway system, it's not working. It will not work because you need to make sure what's the version of your UI5 framework in your gateway server, and accordingly you need to choose the version in SAP WebIDE for that. So I'm right now go with 1.44, click on next, and I just give a name. So let's say my Git or my Git demo, click on next, and I can now choose the OData service which I have it in the system. So I choose my OData service, provide my credentials to my gateway system, and you see all the OData services have been loaded over here. So I choose an OData service. So if you want to know what is an OData service, why we use OData services, all that you want to know, please subscribe to my UI5 and Fiori training. So I'll just probably choose the right one. Yeah. And I say next and just create an application for Fiori Launchpad. Let me give a title for, let's say, my products app, and namespace as demo. Let me give description, my products, and I will now choose the entity set for my master section. So let me choose it as product set. Product ID is what I want to display, and product name is what I want to display into the product title. That's it. I want in the detail line item section, I want to add supplier details for the products, supplier ID, and I want to also add supplier name, company name who is supplying this product to me. Fine. Let's click on finish, and a fresh UI5 project gets created out of the box from this WebIDE template. Now, this is how I typically start with a fresh UI5 project in any project, any company when I join it for as a UI5 developer. Now I'm going to run this project from here, and you see it will start my project. And yes, it's of course asking me my username, password for my gateway server. So let me provide that. Just pass in, and now you will see it loads all the data from the product. Okay, there's some problem in the service. Let me see. So maybe just refresh this once again, and we should be able to good to see the data. Yeah, so it was some temporary issue with the service, and now you can see it's loading all the products information along with the sales orders of that particular product on the right hand side. So we are ready with the setting up our first UI5 project from our OData service. Let's imagine now I want to share or start tracking the versions of this OData service. So before I start the change, my first base app is ready. And I want to now from first day or first development day itself, I want to start version tracking for this. So I can now set up a Git repository. First of all, initialize a local Git repository, and then probably later point of time when we want to deliver or share it with other developers in the team, we will initialize a remote repository as well. So first, let's see how can we work in SAP WebIDE with local Git repository. So I can come back, and I can see all the controllers, views, and different artifacts related to my project is available over here. So I want to first start with initialization of my local repository. So let's remember our picture. We had a local repository with the branch inside this called master, and then any change which we do, we want to track the version, we want to do a commit, and this bubble here represents a commit, every single commit, which then helps me to roll back my current changes and switch back to the previous branch. So let's come here, right click, and I will say git and initialize local repository for my project. Click on this, and you can see immediately system creates a couple of files, and you see the file extension starts with dot, which means it's a hidden file, and it immediately now asking me to add all my files which are there in as part of my project to my first commit to my local repository. So right now this has been initialized, but there is no commit done to the branch, it's empty. So let's do this first commit with as an after initialization of our local repository, make this first commit. So let's come back. I choose stage all changes. Staging here means that we want all these files to be part of it. So for example, if you don't want to track version of a particular file or don't want to give a particular file to your remote repository later point of time, or don't want to track version, then you can uncheck those files which you don't want. So ideally we should use stage all because we want to keep track version of every single file. The moment I do this checkbox, you see there's a double star which indicates that this file is added to the staging now. So you can see the branch name here is already been picked up as a master, because the moment you create a local repository, it automatically creates a branch also for you. Now let's come down, and I will just give a nice message so that I can remember what is the change which I have done in this. So I say the project was started on, let's say, date XYZ, yeah, by developer Anubhav, and this is initial commit to local repository. Yeah, that's my change, and I can click on commit button. Remember, you cannot do a push right now because you have not established a connection to the remote repository. So let's do a commit. And now you can see all of them turn to green symbol, which indicates that all of these changes have been added from staging state to the local repository. You can also come down to this nice little hourglass icon and look at your branch information. So I'll switch to this, and now it's trying to load the branch information. So fully we should see the branch information in this. And yes, you can see my master branch in my local repository has this commit which has been done by me. Now, let's imagine I want to make a small change. So you see here, we have this object name, which is coming like a technical name. I want to now change it to my some semantic name, which user can understand. So I want to change this object name to products. So let's go back, and we all know that internationalization is supported using I18 and file in Fiori. And just come here and make change called products. And then also probably here as well, I want to make it as products. And then also I can just go back and check this object name here, which is coming in the detail page. So probably somewhere down you should see that we have this one, say product details. Save these changes, and now you see there is a nice star icon which indicates that you have some changes which are not yet committed, right? So you made a change in your file, but that change repository don't know. So until you do a commit, the change won't go to the local repository. You can see this picture. The developer has made a change into the source code file, and until user does a commit, it is not getting added to the local repository. So your first commit is done, but no further commits has been done to the repository, which means by any chance, if something bad happens, you will not be able to roll back to this particular state. You will only be able to roll back to the last committed state. So it's better, let's commit this change. And if you just come back to this right side Git icon, you see the file which you have changed automatically gets added to the staging area. And now you have to say stage my change and just say adapted label for master and detail view. And I just click on once again a commit, and you would see again it turns to a green icon which indicates that my change has been saved to the local repository. Let's go back and check the repository information. You see the second commit have been added. Very nice. So similar to this, now you can keep on adding, keep on changing things. So let's say now I probably start some change into my source code, and which would probably disturb something. So maybe I just quickly refresh this change and show you that you will have now labels updated into your master and details section. You see it's working fine. So that's something good candidate for commit. My stable version is available. Now maybe I just go to the system and go to my view, and probably let's go to this view here and make some change which would create a problem for me. And maybe I'm making a lot of different changes which are probably causing a lot of issues. So I'm just making some change which would introduce a syntax error probably, and now I may save it and then try to run this. Okay, so when I try to run this here, refresh, you would see there will be some issue which has been causing now this error. And by mistake, let's say before even testing it, I had committed this. So let me commit this change, which I have done, and to my local repository. So I come back, and I will say here stage this file which I made a change, and I say this is my bad change, which is saved to local repository. Yeah, so that's what I do, and now I can just commit it to my local repository and just go back here and see this change, bad change is available. But now what I want to do, I want to roll back to my previous state. Okay, so how can we roll back to my previous state? So what you can probably do is the changes which you have committed is all visible over here. So see the bad change which you have done recently is also being added over here. So I want to switch back to the previous state. So I can choose, or I can revert this commit. So I can choose the commit which I had selected. So double click on this check mark, and then you can just come down and you can say revert. So you see the file which has been added to the staging area master view, and you are now saying revert this change to previous stable state. So just say revert, and now you see every revert which is done is also added in the version. So you can see this reverts the commit number this. So basically every single change which you do is also getting added to it. So what we did initially was creating a first project, then we made a stable change for I18 and file, then we made a bad change, and now we wanted to roll back or revert this change. So as a revert of this change, it created again one more node in your local repository so that you can track even the reverts also, right? So that's what has happened. And now if you just go back and check out your master, you see that bad syntax which I introduced was gone. So maybe I can now quickly select this and run this, and you should see it should up and running now very well. So that's how you can locally keep track of changes in your system. So that's only for the local developer, a developer who is locally working with the repository. So as long as you are single in your team, you are good. And that's what exactly now here answer the question from Matthias. So Matthias, as you were saying that you have some part of the code which is logically you're made it and it's stable, you can that point of time make a commit to the local repository, and then you can start on top some add-ons, some changes, and let's say you make again some progress 10-20%, then you again make a commit after testing, and then you make some more changes on top of it which are then dependent on something else, and then you realize that some change which you are now doing currently it's not good at all, and also the last made commit change is also not good. So you can revert the last commit, and you can revert to the stage where you all started all over, right? That also you can do it quite easily. So what you can also do now, I can even revert back to the initial version where this product label was not added. So that's also very simple. Let's go back and explore how can we do that. So I come back here, I come back to my WebIDE, and then I want to now switch to this particular level where I had this initial project which was added to the repository. So I want to switch to this particular state of the project where I just created the new project, first project, and I started with it. So if I want to do that, then probably I can then say revert to this particular place, and then it would revert back all my changes which I've done till date. So that's what you can quite easily track the versions locally within your WebIDE. Now, let's get into the game of multiple developers. So I'm not rolling it back because I had a very nice productive change, which was stable, which I made it. So I'm not doing that right now. But yes, you can, of course, now keep track of your changes and roll it back to a particular state whenever you want with the local repository concept. But now, game changes, you have a new hire in your company or in your team, and let's say the developer is also going to work with you. So what is the better way? The better way is now you have to make it global. You have to make like a central folder where you keep all your changes, where you keep all your files. That's your remote repository. So now we are going slowly to the concept of remote repository, where all the changes which you have done local now should be pushed to the remote repository. So anybody else who's working along with you as a code developer should be able to access these changes, should be able to change things, and you should be able to access their changes. And if at all by any chance you both have made change to the same file, then how can we resolve conflicts also? So let's get into system, and for that we need to now set up a remote repository. So for remote repository setup, you can choose one of the option. If you're working with SAP WebIDE productive versions, there are two possible options, guys. So if you're working with WebIDE personal edition, which we are right now, and then probably, as you all know, that we have SAP WebIDE productive version, which is in the HANA Cloud platform. So this is in something in HANA Cloud platform HCP. So for personal edition, you can make use of concept of GitHub. So GitHub provides you free repository to be created, and you can use these repositories for your company purpose. So there are again two options which GitHub gives you. One is a public repository, which is absolutely free. You can use this option, public repository, which we will be using in this demo video. And you have a private repository. So private repository will then cost you something. So if your company wants to go with GitHub implementation, they can go with this private option where your code base will not be publicly available. And of course, that's what every enterprise would prefer to go with. Then on the other side, you have an option for HANA Cloud Platform. So the interesting, nice thing is when you company opt for a HANA Cloud Platform subscription for WebIDE productive version, you will automatically get Git as a service as part of HANA Cloud Platform. So this is something again I will be discussing in some upcoming classes. Or if you are right now interested in this, please subscribe to my HANA Cloud Platform course on my website. So there I've already discussed about how to use Git with HANA Cloud Platform productive version. Okay, so maybe I will, towards the end of the video, maybe I'll just show you initializing a repository in HCP in my trial account. But right now, our focus will be going with the public repository on github.com. So let's go ahead and create a repository for my company in GitHub. So you can all get started with github.com. This is, I would say, the most interesting place you would find in the world, where majority of the companies, majority of the development are happening, probably in private, and there are a lot of source code available also publicly on github.com. So we will start with initializing a repository on GitHub. So let me just start and log in as my user. So I've already registered on GitHub. It's a free account you can create, verify your email with GitHub, and then you can get started with GitHub quite easily, quite fast. So let me connect as my user Anubhav to GitHub. So you can see this is my user Anubhav Abap, which is connected to GitHub. And now I'm just going to initialize a new repository, create a new repository. And I just name this project as my Fiori project, and just provide a description, my Fiori products application. And of course, as I mentioned, this is going to be a public repository which is global and everyone can access. Later point of time in the video description on YouTube, I'm going to post the link for this so you all can try this out, adding this or subscribing to this repository and checking out my code, what I have created here. Click on this repository. It's also good practice to start with a README file added to the repository, so you can give some description about what's about this repository, what it will do. Okay, so I can also just initialize a README text file as part of my repository. So let's create a new repository, and you would see a fresh repository in the GitHub, which is actually going to be a remote repository for us, gets created. So now this remote repository is ready in github.com, which is global, which any developer on any network can make use of. Fine. So in order to now make our code into this remote repository, what is that which we need to do? To move all the code which is there in local repository to remote repository, what is that which we need to do? Very good answer. So we need to push now our changes to the remote repository. Very nice answer. You understood the concept. Thank you so much for that answer. So let's go ahead and do that. So you can see that it has also created an initial commit automatically. Yeah, with my user, initial commit has been done, and a README file has been created also over here in this repository. So I can also edit the file here itself. So I can say this demo is brought to you by online Fiori trainings. .com. Well, and I can then just save the file. So I can commit these changes. I can say first commit to remote by Anubhav. So that's a commit I'm making to remote repository. Commit the change. And of course, you would not do such commits on remote repository like this directly. But yes, at least your initialization of remote repository is done. You can see its first commit is done by me, Anubhav, and there are two commits. So first commit is actually initialization, and then I made one commit to my file. So there are these two commits now available in the remote repository already. You see there are two bubbles already present, and that's been done by me in the remote repository. But now we want to transfer all what we did in local to this remote repository. Yeah, so all our code will can be shared with other developers also in the company, right? So for that, let's come to the details of this repository. So I come back to my repository, and now you see an option called clone or download. So I click on clone, and now you can see an HTTP URL. I copy this. And before you now start working with it, one very interesting point or thing I want to inform all of you that you have to make one small configuration to your WebIDE. So go back to your WebIDE. Okay, go back to your WebIDE, and now here in the WebIDE you see here this preferences. Go to Git settings and just maintain your username and your email address. Okay, so you can see right now I have logged it as Anubhav, so I will maintain here my email ID and then say Anubhav, and I click on save, and this should be the Git username. So let me maintain Anubhav Abap as my Git username, and then my email ID, Git email address. Click on save, and you see preferences have been saved. This is a very important activity, guys. If you do not do this, then your system will be prompting you for doing this at runtime when you're trying to push your changes to remote repository. So better we do these settings beforehand only. Okay, let's come back. And now we are ready. So let's see if there are some uncommitted changes to local. So you see there's something called user project JSON which is created, which is uncommitted. So let me also just make this commit. So my last commit to local before remote push. Just commit this change, and now just quickly show you. You can see these are all the different commits which I had made by far into my local repository. Now it's time to switch or make all these files available in the remote repository so other developer can start accessing it. Correct. So what we do here, we will right click and we say git, and then we say create remote branch. Okay, before that we need to set the remote repository. So choose set remote and then mention the URL which you have copied from there. So let's go back again, clone, HTTP copy, come back, paste the URL. So this is the URL of my remote repository. Click on, oops, sorry, click on OK. Don't choose this option. As I told you, get it is an option for reviews. I don't refer it or I don't use it at this moment. Click on OK. Now it's asking me authentication for my GitHub account. So I will provide my GitHub name, and then I will also provide my GitHub password. You can also say remember, so it won't always prompt you all the time passwords. Click on OK and say OK. So all the changes should be pushed now, but before pushing the changes, you see we need to synchronize because already there are 2 changes in the remote repository which are there, and there are 4 changes in your local repository. So your local repository is out of sync. If you remember, we have 2 changes in remote repository. One was readme file and one was initialization, and there are 4 changes in local repository. They're out of sync. So first of all, you need to fetch what is there in the remote repository. Then once you're synchronized, then you can do a push so that it replaces everything with all the delta changes into the remote repository. So we'll do that. So let's first fetch these changes. So you see it's already asking you to fetch these 2 changes which you have made. So you see in remote repository we have initial commit and one commit which I made directly to remote repository is displaying over here. Click on OK. System fetches these changes automatically. Okay, and then what you can quickly do is also check this up. So you can see there are two. So here this also is a nice feature which shows that there are 6 commits which I made to my local repository which are not yet updated in remote, and there are 2 changes which I fetched from remote repository which are not yet available in my project. So you see nowhere my file, actually my readme file is present here. So you can see this readme file, but that's not updated. You see nowhere I'm writing uh, uh, something that I'm gonna this video is sponsored by Online Fiori Training. That's not available here. So I'm gonna now fetch the changes from remote repository, so that just gets the information about what changes are there in the remote. So you see that these 2 changes. So you do fetch and then you merge the changes into the local. That's called rebase. Okay. So when you do rebase, now it's gonna rebase all the code changes which is there in local with the remote. So it's gonna join what you had early in local will now be joined what is there extra in the remote. So that's a first activity which always you should do before you push any change. Always do a fetch, so that gets the information. Then you do a rebase, so that adapts the changes in your local repository from remote repository. Now, this is at the same time is also sometimes critical because there may be some conflicts which we will see it in the demo next. Okay, so right now there are no conflicts as I assume, and say okay. So you would see it downloads all the changes which are there, and now see the download arrow is gone, which means those 2 changes which were there into my remote repository are now managed and clubbed with my local repository with my project. So they are clubbed. So if I just go to my readme file, so you can see the file which was I had changed on the remote is now available in my local. Yeah, it's been fetched. And now I have 5 changes in total, 5 commits in the local which needs to be pushed to the remote, and we can do it quite easily now. So let's come down and right click here and say push with origin master. You can also use a shortcut at in the right click git and say push. So all what you have in local gets updated to the remote. Click on push and select the branch in the remote. It's origin master. Click on OK. And now you will see in a minute here a message will come that it's pushing. Now, if you don't save your password, it will prompt you for your Git password. You see push has been completed. And now let's go back to our GitHub remote repository. And I'm just going to refresh over here. And you'll see magic. Yes, all the changes which I had in my local repository, all the files which were there earlier in my local project is now globally available. You can take it out, any other developer in my team can take it out, and then of course the point here is, will if it's such a public, then anybody can destroy my changes, right? But there's a nice feature that you can clone this, you can get the file, you can get and look into the code, but you cannot make a push. Okay, because you are not a contributor to this GitHub project. So I have to add you as a contributor, then only you will be allowed to make changes to my files. But at least you can download, synchronize your local project with it, create a local project from this remote repository, look into my changes, but you will not be able to change and replace my files in the GitHub because you are not a contributor. Okay, so that's how you track remote repository, and you see all 7 commits, including 5 my commits locally done and 2 commits which we done in the remote repository are in total available over here. Nice, amazing. So now your remote repository is ready with all the changes, which means now let's hire another developer in our company, in our team, and let him get started with this project also. So we are now a team, not a single contributor. There's a team of developer who should now start contributing to it. So I have to add a contributor. So to add a contributor to this repository, since I am the owner of this repository, I can add a contributor. So let me add a contributor. So I will switch back to the repository, and you can see one contributor here. And now I'm going to say I will be adding a contributor who can make changes to my repository, right? So let me see, there's an option to add a contributor. So I go to settings, collaborators, and now I can find a collaborator on GitHub. So I have one of my friend who is joining us. His name is Sam. UI5, and I'm adding SAM UI5 as a collaborator, which means not just he can take this out, not just he can access my code. Of course, anybody can access because it's public repository, but he can also make changes to it. You can see an invitation has been sent to Sam, and now Sam must have received an email. So let me go to inbox of Sam and check it out. He must have received an email for contributing to this repository. Yes, there you go. You see an email have come up from Anubhav, and Anubhav is asking Sam to and inviting Sam to join and contribute to this project, right? So right click here, copy the link address, and now let me go to GitHub from Sam's account. So this is Sam's account. You can see here, this is I logged in as a Sam UI5, and I just put that over here, that URL, to first accept Anubhav's invitation and start contributing to project created by Anubhav. Accept it, and now Sam can see the repository, remote repository, where Anubhav invited him to contribute. Of course, you all can see this repository. I will be adding this repository into my GitHub account, so you all will be able to see this. Now let me clone this. So clone or download. So I click on clone. So I am Sam now. Okay. So I'm in Sam, and I am working maybe from a different location altogether, but since it's GitHub, it's remote, I can now access it globally anywhere. So I will copy the URL as Sam, and now I go to my WebIDE account. So let me launch another session of WebIDE and log in as Sam. Oops, I cannot probably. So maybe I just log out from here and then log in into SAP WebIDE as Sam. Okay, let me just check. Yes, I remember the password for Sam. And yes, now you see it's a fresh workspace for Sam. He just joined the team. It's empty. Now what he can do is add the project, call the remote repository, and get all the project files, everything into his Eclipse, into his WebIDE, and then create also a local repository and start working same thing what I was doing. So let's go in, right click, workspace, new, and I'm just going to say git, clone repository, pump in the URL here, click on clone. But before that, you remember, he has to go to settings, git settings, and maintain his details. So samui5@gmail.com, and his git username was samui5. So he has to maintain this information in the settings of git in WebIDE. Come here, right click, new, git clone repository, choose a repository, click on clone, and now you would see that the project gets cloned. Voila, you see all the files which Anubhav have created, Sam can clone, and you all can do this actually because it's a public repository. You all can access. Okay, you all can access this. It's public repository, but you cannot contribute because I have not added you as a contributor. So if you want to be a contributor, please drop me an email on anubhav.abab.com so I can add you a contributor to this repository, and then you will be able to contribute to my project as well. Okay, so let's go ahead, and now Sam is about to test this app. So Sam downloads this, and now Sam go ahead and start testing this app. So maybe just run as a web application in Fiori Launchpad. And as you all know that I've already covered all these things in my course, what is a Fiori Launchpad and what is a sandbox server, all that is covered in my Fiori training. You all must be knowing it. And just go inside, and you can see Sam is able to access the Fiori application. Now let's say Sam starts contributing this project. So what Sam has to do now, Sam has been given an assignment to change this master page, where Sam has to change this simple list to an object list, where you should not just show product name, you should also show the product price, product currency, and probably let's say the product category. So what Sam does, Sam goes to the view, and that's your UI5 skill now here. So this is Sam now, and Sam is going to, let's say, object list item here, right? And then just add more properties to it. So I say number, just do the binding, product price, number, unit, and then I say currency code, and then Sam adds also product description, intro equals to category. Save this. Nice, very nice, done. So Sam has made the change, but Sam has to also initialize a local repository where he can now track these changes for himself. And you see automatically local repository has been initialized actually when he has created or cloned a remote repository. That's automatic. You can also see the branch which is checked out is master branch. Now you can see his changes also in staging. He can check this up and then he can say first changes by Sam. Now I will right now do a commit, which means Sam has made a local change and he is now going to test locally the app, and he has found that the changes which he has done are stable. So let me run as Sam, and you will see now this list will change to an object list item, and you see now product category, name, price, and currency. That's what Sam has made the change, and now Sam is committing his changes which are stable. Now, as you all know, commit means what? Local repository. Click on commit. That makes a change into local repository. So you can see first change by SAP, or probably I think I did a mistake, SAP instead of Sam. So now what Sam have done is made this change. Now, by mistake, if you've done some problem, you can also amend the commit. So what you can do is choose this option, amend changes. And you see here, I've got this change which I had made, and I can now change it to Sam. Click on commit. And then you can go back and you see that label have changed for that. So by mistake, if you stage some different file which you shouldn't supposed to stage it, and you want to uncheck that, you can also amend the commit. Okay, so that's why I made that mistake intentionally, to show that you can also amend the commit. Great. So as you all know, it's again in the local repository for Sam. You can see there is one change which Sam has to now synchronize with the remote repository. Now, what is a good practice? So by that time, let's say Anubhav has already made one change and updated. So Sam has to synchronize that. Maybe we'll see that scenario also in a minute. But now there's one change which Sam has made in local repository, which has not been updated to remote repository. And that's been indicated here that you have to upload one change. So what Sam has to do now, push to the remote repository. So go to Git and say push remote branch, select the branch, click on OK, and now just you see it's asking for Sam's credential for GitHub. So SAM UI5, and then I just provide the credentials, and then say remember Sam, and just say OK, and you will see Sam's changes will be available into the remote repository. That commit will be made to the remote repository. Push has been completed. Let's go put back to the remote repository, and I'll just refresh over here and see the total number of commits have been increased by 1. So Sam has made the last change. You can see first change by Sam, and it was 2 minutes ago, and you see he has made one change. Yeah, he's a contributor. Now, nice, beautiful thing is you can also see the source code at any point of time. So by mistake, if you want to go back to very, very old version, want to see what was the code, you can actually do that. So click on this button. It takes you to the state of the code. You see by that time there were 4 commits, and this was the state of my project. So at any point of time, you can switch to any version. That's an amazing version control. You have it in GitHub. Okay, to any branch. Wow. So let's come back to the repository. So we have now the changes done by Sam. So how will Anubhav will now know the change? Anubhav has to also make a change. So let's say now Anubhav is going to again connect to his WebIDE and want to now develop something himself. So let's say I open up another session and just try to connect to WebIDE. So localhost WebIDE. And you see it's logging as a Sam actually. So I have to just log out and connect as Anubhav. So maybe you just can do that here itself. So log out and connect as Anubhav once again. There you go. And now what I have to do is make some change. Now remember, very important point, guys. Before you start your work every day, okay, before you start changing it, what is the best practice? Best practice is, if by any chance in your absence or when you were on leave or when you were not working with UI project, somebody has made some change, you are not aware of it, and by mistake if you make the change to same file, it would lead to conflicts. So the best practice every day when you start your UI5 project changes, always do a fetch and rebase. So fetch will get the information of what was changed. Rebase will make that change available into your local project. Okay. Now, if you don't want to do these two things separately, you can do pull. Pull means you can see the arrow. It's a dotted arrow, which means it will just fetch. And you see dotted arrow, and then below this symbol, which means it rebase. It adapts also. Both buttons, instead of placing both button, you can also work with pull as a single button. So if I just do fetch, it will just fetch the information. So now I give my GitHub data, GitHub credentials. So let me provide that, because I'm just gonna fetch from GitHub, and you will see it won't still show me those changes in my files. So now you see changes made by others are displayed over here. So it's just fetch. It's just fetching the information, and now you see there is one change which has been done in your absence when you were away, or when you were working with your project. Somebody has updated something in the remote repository. There's one change pending which you don't have it in your local project now. So you got to do a rebase. Now let me just show you the file where Sam has made the change. I guess it's in the view. I go to master view. You will see in the list, still in the list you will not see those number unit and stuff. You see, not there, because you just fetch the information of what has been changed. You have not adapted that fetch the information into your code, in your local code. Now let me do a rebase, and yes, with origin master. Okay, and voila, you see all the code made by Sam is now available in your local. So that's a good practice. Always before you start any change, every day, always do a fetch and rebase. You can also use pull if you're so confident that you don't have any local change, you're just starting fresh. Just do a pull every day before you start your work, because it is a combination of fetch and rebase together. Okay, that's a pull. Now I can start a change and kind of easily make this change available to the end users. Now by mistake, let's say I forgot to do this fetch, what will happen? Okay, what will happen if I forgot to do this push into the system? So now let's try to update something here, and then later point of time Sam will also make a change, and then we'll see what happens. So what I'll do is I will now change here this category to something else. So I'll just go back and update this with let's say some different property, let's say width of the product. So I save this. That's Anubhav making a change. Let's test it locally, and then we will do also the commit and push directly. So you see now the width of the product is coming instead of category of the product. And now what I'm going to do is I'll just stage the changes, and I'll say changes by Anubhav in master, and I just do a commit and push, and I just do it directly to the remote branch. Both commit and push will be done, and you will see my changes in the GitHub will be available. So push is done successfully. Let's look at the commits, and now you see my commit changes by Anubhav in master view is now available in the remote branch. So let's say Sam is unknowing of these changes. Sam doesn't know what Anubhav have made, right? So let's log in as a Sam, and let's say Sam just casually start his work with the project, and Sam doesn't know what change I have made, or he has not done a pull. He has not employed this best practice of pulling the change. Okay, so let's see what happens. So I connect as a Sam, and then I just woke up, I came to office, and I am not care about anybody else's work, and I just as a Sam start working with some changes. So maybe I just go to detail view now, and in detail view in the object header I will add some more property, let's say number, and I just want to also display here the price of the product. So that's what I'm making a change. And now what I'm going to do is also add here the number unit, and then I just put here currency code. Okay, and that's it. Save it. Done. And that's a Sam's change, which, and now by this time, if you remember, Anubhav has made one change into master which Sam has not synchronized. Okay, so let's run it as a Sam, and let's see at least Sam's changes are working fine or not. In the details section now you should see the price of the product and the currency, right? You can see that information. But you see the change which Anubhav has made to display the unit, the weight of the product is not available, which means Sam is working with his local repository copy with some more changes he's making. Now let's see Sam tries to update these changes in the remote repository. So first he makes a commit. So let's say detail view changes by Sam, and just a commit. No problem, commit works as it is nicely. And now he tries to do a push. So let's do a push on the remote branch by Sam. So Sam UI5 and the password, and let me store this so that it doesn't ask me every time. Now you will see an error because you see Sam has made some change, but it may happen that the changes which Sam is trying to push to the remote repository may not synchronize because already Anubhav has made one change which has taken the branch to the next level. Now Sam cannot push it until he synchronizes his changes with the remote repository. So for that reason, I also told you that you have to always do a pull. Yeah, that's very important. Before you do this, you will be having a problem. So let's do a pull. So I'll just do a pull now because you see there's something which is pending, and I just do a pull. And this time I'm not doing fetch and rebase, I'm just doing a pull. So this will now bring the changes, and now you see since we have made change into the same file, probably it's causing an issue. You can see to see the current status, refer the git pane. So maybe what I will also do is first do a fetch, and you can see fetch from origin. This was a change done by Anubhav. And now I'll see, is there anything which is conflicting for me? And you see still there is one change which is about to get downloaded. So let's do a rebase. So now I'll just do a rebase, and a rebase with master origin. You have uncommitted changes, that's okay. So let's also make a commit to our changes first, what we have done to our local branch. So I say my or Sam's local change. So it won't allow you also rebase until you first commit to your local repository. Okay, so I first commit to local repository, nothing in the staging area, and now you see there are two commits which I supposed to update in the remote, and there's one commit which I have not updated. That's why it's not allowing me a push. So I'll do a rebase to remote branch, and what changes Anubhav have done will be available. So otherwise skip the patch and abort the rebase. So now you see there are conflicts because both of us has made changes to same file, and this is why you are having now a problem. So you have to now resolve the conflicts. So let's see where are these conflicts. So probably it's in the detail view. So let's go to the detail view and see what conflicts we have. So I'm not able to now recognize what conflict we had it. So maybe I just say skip the patch or reset it to the previous state, and that's it. You can see reset has been completed. So I've reset it to my previous stable state, and then at least I can continue. Nothing to commit. Okay, no problem. So just abort this, and now oops, I think I have a problem. So since I have not downloaded the Anubhav's changes, now I am getting into so many problems. So probably I will discard my changes. So let me just discard it because I'm unable to find where the conflicts are actually, and then do a rebase. And then let's do a rebase. Okay, again it's giving me conflict message. So there is somewhere it's causing a conflict, guys. And you see when I double click on the file, it's telling me where the conflict is. You see, when I double click on the file, wherever conflicts are present, you see it's giving me conflicts. These are all the conflicts. So you see, there's a conflict. So now I can say, I can make the change. So on the left and right side, it's showing me all the conflicts. So there was one change made to this user project JSON file. Last run timestamp is available. So I want to say copy right to left and then say next. Just save this conflict, and then probably also look at details. So you see this was something which has been added by Anubhav, and that's something is which has been added by me. On the left side you see current version, and on the detail of Anubhav, I want this change to be retained. So I say right to left. So I will again roll back my change because this is Anubhav's change. Anubhav had nothing added to it. So to resolve the conflict, I'm kind of removing it. And now I say next, save this, and our conflicts are resolved. Say continue. Yeah, so it allows me, and just continue. Nothing to commit. Yes, so now I'm rebased. Rebase is in progress. Let's continue. Okay, I'll click on probably close. Still it's showing me, guys, the download, it's not able to do it. So in such cases, let's say you have big problem and not able to resolve this thing, you can also reset. So you can simply say reset, and you can say it's a hard reset from the remote repository. So everything what's there in remote repository as of now will be as it is downloaded. Every single change which you have done will go away. Click on OK. Okay, and now you will see all conflicts are resolved. By the way, it has just removed even your changes which you have done, and now you're synchronized with remote repository to just get rid of the problem. And you see your changes are also gone from the detail what you have done. You have to redo those changes because you have reset it. You were unable to resolve the conflict. So now that's why I always say before you start your work, just do a fetch and rebase, fetch and rebase. Now maybe I'll make the change to this file, and I'll also show you resolving the conflict next. So I've got the changes from Anubhav now. You can also test it. You should see the units here instead of product category because Anubhav's changes which were there in remote repository are merged. You see the units. Now go back and just put here price or say number. So my changes are now again redoing it because I kind of could not accommodate those things, and say number unit currency code. Save it and just do a testing. On the right side now you should see the number and number unit should get displayed. Yes, you see number and number unit getting displayed, some extra curly brace. Yeah, remove this, save it, and now let's make this change available to the remote branch. So you can now push this, and I say Sam struggled to make changes and adapted the detail view. Let's do this commit and push together. So maybe just to commit and push to remote branch from Sam's system. And you should now see Sam has adopted Anubhav's changes and also shipped it. So you now understand the role or the importance of doing a pull and rebasing it. If you don't do it, you may get into problems of committing things. So let's go ahead and now see how can we work with something like where both the developers have made change to same file but they are not in sync. So Sam has made a change into this detail file. I will log in as Anubhav now and try to make change into same file without doing a pull, which will lead to conflicts, and we'll see how to resolve the conflict. So let me log in as Anubhav again, and we go inside. And I have now not adapted to Sam's changes, which means I still see the currency and currency unit not displaying in the detail page. And I will now make my change. So I say number equals to curly braces and height of the product. And you remember, Sam has also made a change to the same detail view. I also made a change without pulling Sam's changes. I save it. Now this is a conflicting situation. This is a pure conflicting situation. So now I just do this local commit. So I say Anubhav changing same file without pulling Sam's changes, which will lead to conflict. Okay, and now just first commit it to my local. It's done, and now try to push it. When I try to push, it will give me an error because I'm trying to make a change into the repository where Sam also has a change, and we both are not in sync. So this will fail. You see, rejected. So what I have to do, first pull the changes. So fetch what Sam has made. You will now see there is one change which was not synchronized by Anubhav. which Sam has made. You see, Sam struggled and made his changes, and I see this is there, and I will now do rebase. I try to do rebase from remote branch, and you can see, guys, it's showing now the conflicts. So Sam has made the changes to same code. I made the change to the same code. Both are listed hand to hand here. You can also double click and see the changes left and right. What Sam has done, what you have done. And you can resolve these conflicts now quite easily. So you see that Sam has made this change. This is what upstream. Upstream means remote branch. From where remote branch, this is what you have received. This is what Sam's changes. In same line, this was your change. Both are having problem. Both are conflicting changes. Same file, two developers are trying to change, which was not synchronized. And since you didn't do a fetch before starting your change, you're facing now this difficulty. So you got to resolve it. It's your duty. So now let me decide that I want to go with height, and I don't want to respect Sam's change. I want to go with height in the number, and currency code I want to keep it, and I can just now remove the rest of the things, and that's my final state I want. And I can say stage continue. This is what I want to keep as a final state, and then I can just do a push. So since after resolving conflict, it will allow you to push because you resolve the conflict in the same file. This will be the final state. What Sam will also see it in the remote repository. Okay, so the push has been done, and now when you run this as a SAM, so let me once again log in as a SAM and show you. Just I will do as a pull and see the output. You should see in the right side screen height as well as currency code, not price and currency code. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Log in as a SAM again. And then just see this. So I can come back, and Sam is now logging in next day. He just do a pull. So all changes should come up. And you see it's bringing, and you see again conflicts are arising. So now Sam decides that, okay, because since Sam had a local change available in the system, this is again leading to conflicts. And then I just close this. I don't know, this conflict should ideally not come, guys. Maybe the file was open. Since I'm using same WebIDE to log in as two users, this is the problem happening. But ideally Sam should not see any conflict because he just logged in and pulled it. All the changes have been fetched from remote repository. If he just run this application, he should see on the right side the height as well as the currency code. Okay, there's a problem. In fact, it introduced some conflict. It's behaving little weird, but ideally it shouldn't have. It should have got as it is the changes which are there in remote repository. So you can also do a rebase, because I just log in the day and I can rebase hard with the remote repository. Whatever is there, just fetch it. So Anubhav has already resolved the conflicts and updated it, and I can just do a hard refresh and fetch whatever is there in the remote repository from the system. So let's do that. Okay, this is not working. Hard working directory index updated from remote branch. Okay, yes, reset complete, and just come back, refresh, and let's see what happens. So reset is basically to reset things from remote branch. I think it's still not working. There is some problem happened here. It's still not working. So maybe I just remove the project and re-add from the remote repository. Reset is not working in WebIDE here. Some problem. Maybe I'll just go back to my project and clone it once again. Sometimes you may see some glitches, but ideally in natural way it should work. So git clone repository, push it, and provide the SAM's user ID. I think it's already saved, so it should just pull the project, and I can just refresh. You should see on the detail page the height of the product, including the data. Okay, it's still not pulling the right information. I'm not sure, there is something wrong. Do we have any local commit which is causing this issue? Ideally it should not, though even I did a reset of my local branch with the remote branch, it's still kind of behaving little weird. Okay, not sure. Not sure. Okay, let me just manually adapt this change. There is some problem, guys, because I'm using same WebIDE for both users. Ideally, you'll have two WebIDEs for both the users. That's what ideally will happen, right? So I save it for time being. Okay, it's giving some more errors. Don't know why. Let me just update it. Actually, it's now updating manually. So there's some problem, guys. I'm not sure what's wrong. Ideally it should work, and now you see how it is being displayed on the right side. That's also local commit now. And since I've already rebased it, I've already synchronized, I can push my changes also to the remote branch. So I can say Sam's changes to remote branch. Just to commit to origin, and you should see Sam's changes should also be pushed to the remote branch. Done. And that's it. Congratulations. You have learned how to work with GitHub with two developers working together in a single project. We saw the process of creating a local repository, creating a report repository, what is a commit, what is a push, what is a pull and rebase, and what is a fetch. Yeah, we also discussed about after a certain milestone is achieved, you can export the project as a zip file and deploy it to your gateway system. So you can directly do it from GitHub. Come here and you can see download zip, and that's what you give it to your ABAPer to deploy it to your ABAP system. You can also then probably just go to WebIDE, and this is your project which is synchronized with Git, already fetched, all nodes are updated. Right click, and then you can just do deploy to your SAP ABAP system. Yeah, and of course choose your ABAP system. Maybe I choose this one and choose deploy. I don't have rights right now. Authorizations are not there to deploy. So otherwise I could have just say next and deploy my, after a particular milestone is achieved, you can do that. So till that time, a daily day-to-day work, you always work with Git repository. So hope you like my video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you'd want to detail about UI5 and Fiori training, please feel free to go to Fiori onlinefioritrainings.com, my website. You will find a lot of interesting information about SAP UI5, Fiori. So we are developing the Fiori. I'm teaching how to create Fiori applications from scratch. If you're an ABAP developer, you're confused, you don't know these new techniques like JavaScript and stuff, you're afraid of it, don't worry. I'm covering everything from scratch in my course, including all the latest concepts like component.js, router, root match handler, manifest JSON, custom controllers, custom codes, scaffolding template, new design techniques, XML views, HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, everything is covered in this first course. If you want to go to the advanced level, you can go with Launchpad training and extensions. And then of course, S4 HANA CDS view modeling, creating of analytical apps, and ABAP on HANA training if you want to go. These are all the three mandatory things which an ABAPer now should know if you want to grow in the company. If you want to grow in your career further in SAP domain as a developer, these things you must learn now these days. Another interesting point is free interview questions are available on my website. You can go ahead and download free questions on ABAP on HANA interview as well as UI5. So feel free to get back to me on my email ID anubhav.abap@gmail.com. So maybe just post it here. So you can also approach me to get this PPT, what I've created here, to understand or remember the concept. You can also email me regarding your suggestions, complaints, questions of this tutorial. Tell me, how did you like this tutorial? Was it really helpful? Did it clarify concepts from basics? And would you be also interested in more videos? So please give me like, please give me comments, some shares on YouTube, which will motivates me to present more and more content to you on this YouTube channel. Thank you so much. Have a nice day and goodbye.